infinitely demanding aims to defend a revised concept of political anarchism and raises important questions about the current philosophico-historical juncture. Critchley recognizes that the problem of political motivation is not just an empirical question, but also a philosophical problem. He rejects two common responses to this situation: passive nihilism and active nihilism, which are the belief that if corrupt political institutions can be destroyed, we will achieve or return to a meaningful political existence. Critchley's project in Infinitely Demanding is to articulate a conception of ethics that can ground a notion of political action in a way that makes it ethically meaningful, while avoiding the dangers of simple apolitical self-interest and absolutist political fury. He introduces the meta-ethical proposition that ethical experience, the activity through which a subject binds itself to and commits itself to pursuing a particular conception of the good, has a simple formal structure. The subject commits itself to a particular good when it approves of a demand that is placed upon it. Critchley also argues that subjectivity itself is only formed around the ethical experience of the approval of a demand that it finds placed upon it. This notion is indebted to Emmanuel Levinas's later writings on the ethical constitution of the subject, which he acknowledges, although it may seem paradoxical, if this structure is circular, it is not a vicious circle, but an accurate account of the mutual constitution of ourselves and our fundamental ethical beliefs. Infinitely Demanding is an ambitious book that raises all the right questions at our current philosophico-historical juncture, raising all the right questions that Anglo-American moral and political philosophy has for the most part swept under the rug. It is essential for political philosophy to address the possibility of a cure, as well as diagnosing the disease of political motivation and the need for a more empowering conception of ethics that can face the drift of the present. Critchley explores the problem of ethical motivation and the conceptual strategies through which philosophers have attempted to resolve it. He argues that the key characteristic of Kant's fact of reason is its simultaneous existence outside and inside the subject, stirring the unauthorized distribution of empirical will and rational will. This structure remains the dominant motif of the post-Kantian philosophical tradition, from Fichte through Heidegger. Critchley rejects the autonomy orthodoxy and provides an account of individual ethical subjectivity, a subjectivity divided against itself by the exteriority of an ethical demand that is expropriating rather than appropriated. He draws on Alain Bach and the Danish theologian Knud Ilja Elgstrup's work on ethics, but his primary model and source of inspiration is Emmanuel Levinas's philosophy. Critchley takes the idea that the ethical demand is both singular and universalizable, allowing the subject to be turned violently against itself. This unsatisfiable demand is described in hyperbolic terms as persecution, obsession, substitution, hostage, and trauma. However, this Levinasian formulation of ethical subjectivity is virtually unlivable, as a subject divided against itself would be unable to engage in ethically motivated political action. In Chapter 3, Critchley attempts to resolve this problem through the mechanism of sublimation. His reliance on this psychoanalytic term of art is enabled by his claim that Lacan's notion of ethics is structurally identical to Levinas's. Critchley claims that humor is a superior mode of resolving the problem, as it allows the superego, which holds the place of the impossible ethical demand, to laugh at the inadequacy of the subject, the self or ego. Humor is deflationary in a self-revealing manner, transforming self-violence into a chastening self-understanding. If this notion of humor is often dark, it is always lucid. In this way, the rift within the ethical subject may be consoled, if not cured, by a positive superego that liberates and elevates by allowing the ego to find itself ridiculous. Infinitely Demanding is a book that explores the ethical and metaethical aspects of politics. It presents a freestanding theory of political action, which can be understood as providing its motivational substructure. Critchley's theory of political action posits that effective political subjects today must be self-consciously constructed, not emerge naturally, as a byproduct of the organization of means of production. He believes that this construction is a matter of finding an effective name for the new political subject, one that allows organizing to take place around universalizable political and legal demands made in this name. Critchley's politics are entirely anti-statist, with the point of organizing being to create interstitial distance within the state for the emergence of a new political subject. Politics and true democracy are thus a matter of resistance to state power. His conception of ethical subjectivity, as riven by an infinite demand and moderated by a self-mocking humor, provides a meta-political moment that justifies his politics of resistance. Critchley's anarchic Levinasian ethical demand disrupts the autarky of the autonomous subject, providing both model and motivation for the anarchic disruption of the state. This understanding of politics and the ethical model that underwrites it receive their confirmation and concrete embodiment in contemporary anarchist movements, like the ones that disrupted the WTO meetings in Seattle. Theirs is a carnivalesque humor deployed as a political strategy, one that combines street theater, festival, performance art, and what might be described as forms of non-violent warfare, a new language of civil disobedience. However, critics have doubts about both Critchley's pragmatic political and ethical theoretical conclusions. They fear that a political strategy, limited to the carnivalesque, will never achieve the goal of creating safe spaces for the creation of new political subjectivities. A purely carnivalesque politics also risks replicating the evils of both nihilisms that Critchley condemns. Critchley questions whether humor can solve the self-lacerating Levinasian ethical subject as the identification of the superego with the demand of the ethical other does not seem entirely consistent with Levinas's notion of the subject. The negativity that marks Critchley's politics may be a function of his failure to escape completely from that orthodoxy. Instead, the author suggests another relation, such as love. Infinitely Demanding has set the agenda for debate and remains required reading for anyone interested in the forward edge of contemporary ethical and political philosophy.